Hi, I'm Mackenzie Crockford. Today I'll be teaching you about the different replication processes for cells and viruses. To start off, I'm going to show you how different they look from one another. The bottom is a general eukaryotic cell. I'm not going to discuss very much about it because we already know a lot about it from previous knowledge. In the top, we have two different viruses. One's a bacteriophage and then the other is an influenza virus. In this model, for the bacteriophage, this is a head. It's actually called a protein coat, and inside the protein coat is a protected nucleic acid, which contains the DNA. So bacteriophages actually have DNA. And then this neck thing here is actually called a tail. That's where the DNA will go through to get to the cell once the fibers, the little legs here, are attached to the cell. In this one's an influenza virus, and it's a little bit different. It's kind of like a giant protein coat. Inside the protein coat is, of course, the nucleic acid with DNA. However, influenza is different. Instead of DNA, like bacteriophages, actually has RNA. And then the green outer layer is actually called a membrane envelope, which protects the protein coat and the RNA inside. So now that we have gone over what they look like, we're going to go over what their replication stages look like. Everyone will get these handouts, don't worry about that. So it's a little hard to see, and I understand that. But the first stage, or the start of mitosis cell division, is right here. It's where the DNA replicates, and then the actual first stage of mitosis is prophase, and that's where the chromosomes are visible in the cell. So they're right here. And then in the next stage is called metaphase, and that's where chromosomes attach to spindle fibers in the middle of the cell at the metaphasal plate right here. And you actually have chromosomes from both parents, so 2 from mom, 2 from dad. And then in the next phase called anaphase, it actually has the chromatids, or chromosomes, separating from each other and going to opposite ends of the cell, or different poles. And so when this happens, in the next phase, called telophase, it actually creates 2 nuclei from the chromatids here. And with these 2 nuclei in this one cell, it actually has to split. And so that actual split is called cytokinesis, and it creates 2 daughter cells, each with 1 nuclei from the giant cell. And that's basically mitosis in a nutshell. At the end of mitosis, you are only left with 2 daughter cells. Now, viruses replicate a little bit differently. They have a lytic cycle and a lysogenic cycle. So for the lytic cycle, you have, for our purposes, the bacteriophage attaching to the host cell and entering it. In the next phase of this, you have both the phage DNA and the cell DNA next to one another. They do not really interact with each other. However, the phage DNA uses the cell DNA in order to replicate into multiple bacteriophages. So that's what occurs in this stage right here. And then in the last stage here, once as many bacteriophages are created, it kills the cell to release them. Now, the lysogenic cycle is similar. However, the bacteriophage actually becomes, well, the phage DNA becomes a part of the cell DNA. And then once that happens, it creates 2 cells, right? Yes, it creates 2 daughter cells, which is similar to what we experienced in mitosis. And then in the next phase here, which is the last one, is, and I quote, "Under stressful conditions, the phage DNA is excised from the bacterial chromosome and enters the lytic cycle. So once it breaks off into daughter cells, an individual cell actually has the phage DNA and the cell DNA separate again. And then it carries on with how the rest of the lytic cycle continues from the last two phases up here, and you can review that later on. After all this, oh, and here's another example of mitosis and another example of the viral cycles of replication. After this, you will watch two videos, both by the Amoeba sisters, and it's just rehashing what we just went over, and you're going to fill these handouts out when you're done to make sure that you have all the information that you should. And that is mitosis and the viral reproduction processes in a nutshell. I hope you enjoyed.